I've always been one of those people who eagerly anticipates Black Friday. The excitement of getting the best deals and the thrill of the early morning rush to the stores have always been a part of my Thanksgiving tradition. However, this year was different, and it's a Black Friday I'll never forget. It all started on Thanksgiving Day. My family had gathered for a big dinner, but I couldn't help but think about the sales and discounts waiting for me the next morning. I had meticulously planned my shopping route, with a list of must-have items and a strategy to get in and out of the stores as quickly as possible. Little did I know that my plans would soon take a horrifying turn. The alarm clock buzzed at 3:30 a.m., and I jumped out of bed, eager to get a head start on the crowds. I slipped into warm clothes, grabbed my list, and headed out the door. The sky was pitch black, and the air was chilly, but the anticipation of great deals kept me going. As I arrived at the first store, I was greeted by a line of people that stretched as far as the eye could see. It was the usual Black Friday madness, but this time, it felt different, more intense. People were pushing and shoving, trying to secure their spot in line, and the tension was palpable. I joined the line, hoping that the ordeal would be worth it. Hours passed, and the line inched forward. The darkness of the night seemed to deepen, and the cold gnawed at my bones. I checked my watch. It was nearly 5:30 a.m., and the store was set to open in half an hour. The anticipation was reaching its peak, but something strange was happening. The people around me started murmuring about a sense of unease, a feeling that something was not right. I brushed it off as the result of the early morning chill and the Black Friday frenzy. But then a woman nearby gasped and pointed to the sky. I followed her gaze and froze in terror. Above us, the stars were vanishing, one by one, as if a cosmic shroud was blotting them out. I couldn't believe my eyes. It was like something out of a science fiction movie. Panic rippled through the crowd, and people began to scream. The darkness above intensified, and an eerie silence fell over us. The streetlights flickered and died, plunging us into complete darkness. I fumbled for my phone, desperately trying to illuminate the area with its feeble flashlight. It was then that I heard it, a strange, otherworldly hum that seemed to come from all around us. The hum grew louder, and a feeling of dread settled in the pit of my stomach. I looked around, and the faces of the people around me were contorted in fear. Some were praying, while others simply wept. I tried to make sense of the situation, but it was impossible. Suddenly, the ground beneath us began to tremble. The asphalt cracked, and a deep, guttural roar echoed through the air. The buildings around us shook, and panic erupted once more. People started running in all directions, trampling over each other in their desperation to escape. I too began to run, not knowing where I was headed. The darkness was suffocating, and the strange hum continued to reverberate in my ears. I stumbled and fell, scraping my hands on the rough pavement. As I picked myself up, I realized that I was alone, surrounded by an impenetrable void. I tried to call for help, but my voice seemed to disappear into the darkness. I felt utterly isolated, as if I had been transported to a different dimension. Fear gnawed at my sanity, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Hours, or perhaps days, passed in that eerie void. I lost track of time, and my sense of reality began to blur. Just when I thought I couldn't take it any longer, the darkness began to recede, slowly but surely. The stars reappeared one by one, and the hum faded away. I found myself lying on a deserted street, battered and bruised. The world had returned to its normal state, but I couldn't shake the memory of what had happened. It was a Black Friday unlike any other, a true horror story that defied explanation. To this day, I don't know what happened that fateful Black Friday. Was it a cosmic event, a glitch in reality, or something far more sinister? All I know is that I'll never look at Black Friday the same way again, and the true horror of that day will haunt me for the rest of my life. It was the eve of Black Friday, and I couldn't contain my excitement. The annual shopping frenzy was just around the corner, and I had been meticulously planning my strategy for weeks. Little did I know that this Black Friday would turn out to be a true horror story. My day began early, long before the sun had even considered rising. Armed with a shopping list and a thermos filled with coffee, I joined the line outside the big box store. The atmosphere was electric with anticipation as fellow shoppers chatted and exchanged stories of their past Black Friday conquests. As the doors finally swung open, a surge of people rushed in, and I was caught up in the tidal wave of consumerism. The store was a chaos of flashing lights, aggressive shoppers, and screaming children. I navigated the aisles, grabbing items off my list with adrenaline coursing through my veins. But then, something strange happened. I noticed a peculiar man in a tattered trench coat and a hat pulled low over his eyes. He was lurking in the shadows of the store, watching the crowd with an eerie grin. Something about him sent a chill down my spine, but I brushed it off as fatigue and continued my shopping. Hours passed, and I had almost completed my list. I decided to take a break and grab a snack from the store's cafeteria. As I munched on a greasy hot dog, I couldn't help but overhear a conversation at the adjacent table. A group of people was discussing the strange man I had seen earlier. One woman whispered, "I saw him in the toy section, but he wasn't shopping. He was just standing there, staring at the dolls." Another man chimed in, "I saw him too, near the electronics section. He was muttering something under his breath, and it gave me the creeps." My curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to investigate further. I went back into the store, hoping to find the mysterious man. As I walked down the dimly lit toy aisle, I felt a growing sense of unease. The shelves were lined with dolls of all shapes and sizes, and I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. Then, I saw him. The man was standing in the shadows, his gaze fixed on a doll with long black hair. He seemed to be whispering to it, his words barely audible. I approached cautiously, my heart pounding in my chest. "Excuse me, sir," I ventured. "Is everything okay?" The man turned to me, and his eyes were devoid of any sanity. "She's here," he hissed. "She's always here. Watching. Waiting." I took a step back, my fear intensifying. "Who is she? What are you talking about?" Before he could answer, a blood-curdling scream echoed through the store. Shoppers began to panic, and a wave of chaos erupted. I turned to see a commotion near the store's entrance. People were running and shouting, and I knew something was terribly wrong. I followed the crowd, my heart pounding in my ears. When I reached the entrance, I couldn't believe what I saw. The glass doors were shattered, and a swarm of crows had descended upon the store. They cawed and flapped their wings, creating a scene straight out of a horror movie. Amidst the chaos, I spotted the strange man again. He was now standing in the middle of the aisle, surrounded by the eerie dolls from the toy section. They seemed to have come to life, their eyes glowing with an unnatural light. The man was chanting in a language I couldn't understand, and the dolls moved in a sinister dance around him. I knew I had to escape, but the exits were blocked by the frenzied crowd and the malevolent crows. Panic consumed me as I watched the dolls draw closer to the man, their tiny hands reaching out towards him. It was a nightmare come to life. In a desperate bid for survival, I pushed my way through the terrified shoppers and made a run for the fire exit. As I burst out into the cold night air, I couldn't help but look back one last time. The store was engulfed in darkness, and the cawing of the crows echoed in the distance. I never found out what happened inside that store on that fateful Black Friday. The news reported it as a freak accident caused by a gas leak, but I knew the truth was far more sinister. The strange man, the possessed dolls, and the swarm of crows were all part of a horrifying ordeal that still haunts my nightmares. So, as Black Friday approaches each year, I can't help but shudder at the memory of that true Black Friday horror story. And I caution anyone who dares to venture into the madness of the shopping frenzy. Beware of the darkness that may lurk within the aisles, for you never know what horrors may await. It was the day after Thanksgiving, and the excitement in the air was palpable. Black Friday had arrived, and my friends and I were determined to make the most of it. We had heard stories of incredible deals and insane crowds, but nothing could prepare us for what we were about to experience. As the sun began to rise, we gathered at the local mall, armed with our shopping lists and a sense of adventure. The parking lot was already a chaotic mess, with cars jostling for spots and shoppers rushing towards the entrance. It was like a battlefield, and we were the soldiers ready for the fight. We made our way inside the mall, and the atmosphere was electric. People of all ages and backgrounds were swarming the stores, their eyes fixed on the bargains before them. The noise was deafening, with the chatter of excited shoppers mixing with the blaring holiday music. Our first stop was the electronics store, where a massive sale on flat-screen TVs had drawn a sizable crowd. I grabbed one off the shelf and checked the price tag. It was a steal, and I couldn't believe my luck. As I made my way to the checkout line, I noticed something strange. The employees seemed agitated, their faces pale and their eyes darting nervously. I shrugged it off as stress from the Black Friday madness and continued on. Our next destination was the toy store, where my friend Sarah wanted to buy some gifts for her nieces and nephews. The aisles were a mess, with toys scattered everywhere and parents frantically searching for the hottest items. Sarah picked out a few toys, and we headed to the checkout. That's when we heard it. A loud, blood-curdling scream that sent shivers down our spines. We turned to see a woman, her face contorted in terror, pointing towards the escalator. We followed her gaze and saw something that made our hearts race. A figure dressed in black was standing at the top of the escalator, staring down at the shoppers below. The person's face was obscured by a hood, and they held something in their hand that glinted menacingly in the fluorescent light. Panic rippled through the crowd as people tried to get away from the escalator, but it was too late. The figure began to descend, step by step, moving with an eerie calmness. As they got closer, we could see that they were holding a knife, a long, gleaming blade that looked deadly sharp. The mall security was nowhere to be seen, and the shoppers were left to fend for themselves. My heart was pounding in my chest as the figure reached the bottom of the escalator and started moving towards us. I grabbed Sarah's hand, and we joined the frantic rush to the nearest exit. The screams and cries for help echoed in our ears as we pushed through the crowd, desperate to escape the impending danger. We finally made it outside, gasping for breath and trembling with fear. We looked back at the mall, but the figure had disappeared into the chaos. We called the police, who arrived quickly and began searching the mall for the intruder. Hours passed, and we watched as the police evacuated the mall and brought out the terrified shoppers. News reporters swarmed the scene, and the mall was cordoned off with yellow tape. It was a nightmare, and I couldn't shake the feeling of dread that had settled over me. As the day wore on, we learned that the figure had attacked several shoppers before vanishing. Thankfully, there were no fatalities, but several people had been injured. The police launched a manhunt, but the perpetrator remained elusive. Black Friday had turned into a true horror story, one that none of us would ever forget. The sense of excitement and anticipation had given way to a chilling realization. The holiday season could be a time of danger and darkness as well. In the days that followed, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease that had settled over me. I had witnessed something truly terrifying, something that defied explanation. It was a stark reminder that even in the midst of holiday cheer, there could be a darkness lurking just beneath the surface. As the years passed, Black Friday lost some of its appeal for me. The thrill of the hunt had been replaced by a lingering sense of dread, a fear that the horrors of that day could return. I had learned the true meaning of Black Friday, the day when the line between chaos and madness blurred, and the darkness within us all could be unleashed.